lot of blame toward black people for being the cause of how white people treat them. And white churches have not just been supported by white supremacy, they have served as its headquarters.
Let's cut the shit. Slavery in America wasn't just about forced labor. It was about forced birth.
Why I Stopped Being a Racist, Part 1.
Accurate history is teaching white Americans how white slave owners raped.
White people don't want slavery taught in school because they don't want their kids to feel guilty.
Hi guys, my name is Esther Daniel and you're welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into something powerful, uncomfortable and absolutely necessary. A white woman has gone viral for doing what many won't, telling the truth about how white America has historically and systematically used black people.
I am trying to get real with myself and with other white people, and it is painful work. There's a whole lot of blame toward black people for being the cause of how white people treat them, and I'm trying to get to the bottom of that. I decided to take a closer look at slavery, since that's such a big topic in the United States. There has been slavery all over the world forever, and all colors of people have enslaved other colors of people for as long as we know about. But the transatlantic slave trade, in which Europeans brought African and Caribbean black people to the United States to be free labor in the new colonies before they were really the United States, is a whole different story of slavery. Slavery historically had to do with who won and who lost a war, who was convenient, who stumbled by at the wrong time, and so it wasn't specifically race-based. So why did these white Europeans choose black people to enslave? Because their physical differences from whites made it easier to create lies that they were biologically inferior. They invented science to defend this. It was easier to make these people who looked so different from us less human. And that lie made it easier to justify torture, rape, family separation, and death on a massive scale. And it made them, quite frankly, easier to identify if they tried to escape. The legacy didn't disappear when slavery ended. Eugenics came along and fed the racial superiority notion of whiteness, and it influenced the Nazi narrative along with the racial one. It carried over into segregation, Jim Crow, housing, policing, incarceration, education, all of that. If we're ever going to fix what's broken, we need to get curious enough to name how it got broken in the first place. White people need to get curious so we can say no more, not on my watch. White churches have not just been supported by white supremacy, they have served as its headquarters. I know you don't want to hear that. They have taught white people that oppression is godly and that power belongs to us by divine right. After the civil rights movement, powerful white people, men, saw that their grip was slipping. Black people were winning court cases. Poor people were organizing. Women were demanding rights. How dare we? LGBTQ people were coming out of their closets, and the foundations of white male dominance were cracking. So they thought, what can we use that no one will question? In 1979, Jerry Falwell founded the Moral Majority. He said it was about championing family values. That was a lie. The real trigger was that the IRS had begun revoking tax exemptions for whites-only Christian schools. Those whites-only schools were created specifically to avoid integration. Falwell's own school, Liberty Christian Academy, was one of them. The platform of the Moral Majority ended up getting built around the issue of abortion. Although that wasn't the original plan, they basically test drove different topics to see which ones would resonate the most with the audience they needed to capture, which was white Americans, white Christian Americans. It had everything to do with maintaining the right to discriminate, yet still enjoy government benefits. This guy named Paul Weyrich, who was a conservative political strategist, he teamed up with Falwell to build a political base. He admitted that abortion had not really motivated white evangelicals until it became politically useful. Their real grievance was losing control over who could sit in their classrooms, walk into their churches, and live in their neighborhoods. Once they realized that abortion could mask their racial panic, they made that their headline issue. They built a movement that turned pulpits into propaganda platforms. Sunday services became political strategy sessions. That's illegal. You're not supposed to be able to do that at a church if you're getting tax exemption. Ministers told white families that their enemies were not the wealthy elites exploiting their labor. They were not the politicians cutting their wages and stealing their pensions. The churches pointed to the poor, the black, the brown, the queer, the immigrant. Those people are the ones that are taking food out of your children's plate. They told white people they were being persecuted every time they were asked to share. And yes, I understand what it means for me to say this out loud. I know what it means to say that the church, something which is so sacred to so many, has been a central engine of the immoral institution of white supremacy. I know this will upset people. The white church has stood on the wrong side of every fight for justice in this country. Every one. During slavery, it defended human ownership. During Jim Crow, it defended lynching and segregation. Christian church members attended lynchings and brought their children to steep them in that evil. During the civil rights movement, it defended denying benefits to black people. During the rise of Trump, it defended cruelty in the name of religious liberty, as if Trump has a clue. Some churches resisted, yes. There are liberal churches who have a strong history of being on the right side of these issues, but most didn't. Most chose comfort. Even now, white churches help elect leaders who lie, steal, incite violence. They wage war on education. They call justice wokeness as an insult. They are consuming a message that keeps them at the center with the elite in their minds. They choose white power over compassion, over empathy. One share shows you care about setting the record straight. Please share. Next time, I am going to talk about how Donald Trump did not hijack this system. He was groomed into it.
Let's cut the shit. Slavery in America wasn't just about forced labor. It was about forced birth. America didn't just work enslaved people to death. It bred them. And not like people, like livestock. If the transatlantic slave trade was a kidnapping, breeding plantations were the farm. And I said what I said. After the transatlantic slave trade was banned in 1808, the U.S. had a problem. They still wanted the free labor, but they had no more legal supply. Their solution? Turn black wombs into factories. Breeding plantations, and yes, they were called that, were designed specifically to reproduce more enslaved people. The goal wasn't to grow food, it wasn't to pick cotton. It was to force women to give birth to more product. Because that's what we were. Product. Black women weren't seen as mothers. They were uteruses with a resale value. Their fertility, that was the commodity. And their babies, assets on a ledger. Let's be real. This was organized. Some enslavers forced women to have 10, 12, 15 children. Not out of love, but out of cold-blooded capitalism. Some kept track of their pregnancies like breeding dogs. Black girls, as young as 13, were to kickstart their production. If they couldn't reproduce, they were often whipped, sold, or killed. And don't you dare forget about the men. Black men were used as studs. That's literally the word they used. They were, too, forced to mate with women chosen by their enslaver, sometimes their own family, sometimes multiple women in a row. Consent was a fantasy, trauma was the norm, and the goal was always profit. Virginia, Maryland, and parts of North Carolina became baby farms for the Deep South. And once those babies hit a certain age, they were sold down the river, often with chains still attached to their mother's arms. This is the legacy that birthed America's wealth. Families like the Talos, the Ball family, and others made millions off of children born from these violent systems. Wall Street was built to insure and trade these bodies. And if you're wondering why Black women still aren't believed about our pain, why we're 3 times more likely to die in childbirth, this is the root. Doctors experimented on those same women without anesthesia. Gynecology was literally founded on the abuse of Black wombs. So no, slavery wasn't just labor. It was a full-blown human breeding industry. And if that makes you uncomfortable, it should, because America wasn't built by accident. It was built with intentional, systemic, with generational torture passed off as policy. And the fact that you can visit some of these plantations today and see wedding venues instead of crime scenes, that tells you everything about what this country values. Not justice, not truth, just comfort for white folks. But we're not going to be quiet about it. We're not going to soften the language anymore. And we're not going to let the history die just because they're ashamed of it. This happened, and now they're going to hear about it every damn time we speak.
Accurate history is teaching white Americans how white slave owners raped, beat, humiliated, mutilated, murdered, and cannibalized their slaves. Accurate history is teaching that George Washington's false teeth were made out of his slaves' teeth. Accurate history is teaching that Abraham Lincoln may have said some words and signed some shit, but he did not physically do anything to free the slaves. The white abolitionists also often get almost total credit for freeing the slaves. I bet you've never even asked yourself what the slaves were doing to free themselves, and the answer to that is most of the fucking work, including giving the ultimatum of war. But then we get a bunch of white people mad that their kids might feel guilty if we teach real history. It's not about your white child's feelings. Teaching accurate history isn't about white people's feelings, but that does sound like something that someone who's only ever been taught a white glorifying version of history would counter with. Ask why we ever felt like we needed to curate a false version of what white people did and did not do to Black people to begin with. And then ask yourself why white-ass politicians are verbally attacking real history by calling it slurs, which is, by default, also the act of calling Black people slurs.
The cognitive dissonance with you Christians is never ending. I know you probably heard people say that on there. I hear it all the time. I'm a Christian, so people say that against Christians. Here's a definition of cognitive dissonance. It's a mental discomfort that results from holding 2 conflicting beliefs, values, or attitudes. People tend to seek consistency in their attitudes and perceptions, so this conflict causes unpleasant feelings of unease or discomfort. So what happens on here, you see it all the time. You have your view, what you believe, and then somebody comes in and either dismantles it or disproves something, and you want to continue to hold that without listening to them. So you ignore them, you twist around your beliefs. It's kind of like putting a round peg in a square hole. You try to force it in there. It's got to believe. This has to be truthful. I don't want them to win, or I don't want to listen to what they're saying there. That's cognitive dissonance. Okay, so do I think Christians have cognitive dissonance where they're inconsistent sometimes? Absolutely, I do. I think everybody in some way does that. But atheists are not off the hook on this. But then a Christian comes in and provides an answer for something, say, as big as the problem of evil. If your God is so good, if he's powerful, can do all these things, how come there's still evil in the world? How come there's still problems? There's still people being killed, there's murders, there's pedophiles, all this stuff is happening. So he's either not good, not powerful enough, not worth worshiping, or he just doesn't exist. Now the thing is, this is a big question that needs to be answered, but it has been provided with answers for hundreds of years. It's out there, but are there many people listening to it? Some people do, but then there are some people who have cognitive dissonance. They want to reject it. They want to reject those answers. They want to ignore them and keep holding into the belief that they want. They want to twist their views when something is poked at in their worldview and want to try to fit a round peg in a square hole for their own worldview. They want to continue to hold that. That's cognitive dissonance. Christians can do it, but atheists as well. So when someone comes in and says, your God should be this way, I would say, hold up, like, according to who? According to what standard? You're appealing to some objective, truthful standard, yet still trying to hold to this subjective worldview. Talk about cognitive dissonance. That's inconsistencies. Here's all I'm asking, okay? Both sides. Rather than just pull out the easiest, smallest, weakest argument we can from the other side and just put it up there and say, this is why they're evil and they're wrong. And we just want to have a bunch of people clap us and like us and all these type of things on there. Let's listen to both sides. Let's throw the cognitive dissonance to the side. Let's say we're seeking the truth and listen to each other. I'm not saying it's going to change you, but let's listen. Let's talk. Let's get into real conversations, real debates where we go back and forth and we listen to the other side. Otherwise, what are we really doing on here?
White people don't want slavery taught in school because they don't want their kids to feel guilty. I was having a conversation with an old conservative friend of mine that I used to have. We no longer talk. And it was about the erasure of the teaching of slavery in school. And he said he wholeheartedly supported them no longer teaching about slavery in school because he doesn't want his daughter to have to grow up feeling guilty about something that she never did. He supports erasing history, essentially, because he doesn't want his child to feel guilt because of the crimes of their ancestors. If you were wondering why, I'm sure you can kind of see why we're not friends anymore. And the whole thing is, your daughter wouldn't have to feel guilt if your parents, their parents, hell, if even you had worked on doing something, you and your peers worked on doing something to try to correct the wrongs that were done in the past. This is not me saying that there have not been things done to make life better for my people, but also if those things still don't outweigh the things that were done in the past to a degree where you think that your child simply knowing what was done in the past is going to create a level of guilt that you are not comfortable with them having, them learning the history is not the problem here.
Why I stopped being a racist, part 1.
I've been asked probably well over 1,000 times in the comments and messages why I chose to confront my own racism and my prejudice ideology. So I thought I'd just have an honest conversation with you and break it down over a few parts and let you see into the mind of someone like me, the way I grew up, and the man I'm becoming. Now here's the crazy thing. I've only ever known one racist in my life for sure, and that's me, because I can't speak into the hearts and minds of another human being and what they think and feel. That's not fair, and that's prejudicial of me. So I'm the only one I've ever known, so I feel I can speak with authority about this. I'm not calling out other people who are. This is simply about my evolution and the things I confronted and some of the difficulties and some of the beautiful parts of this. This is not an easy thing for me to do. This is kind of laying my soul bare. So if you would, let me know if this is something you want me to continue in the comments, please, because it's going to take a lot for me to invest emotionally to be open about this. Now, why is it I grew up with so much prejudice and bias and discrimination in my life? Well, I grew up in a small town in Arkansas, and I am Arkansas proud. Let me just say that right off the top. But I grew up with people who taught me these things, and it was instilled in me. I mean, it was just reinforced over and over. And then for the most part, I lived in an echo chamber of other people who thought the same thing. So I didn't know it was possible to think any other way. I was raised Christian. I cannot explain to you why my faith in God, my morality, and my racism took so long to cross paths. I can't explain it, but it probably took about 40 years to figure that out. There's a whole series of events in my life, I guess, ultimately that led up to this. And prison was probably one of the biggest catalysts, because when you're on 23-1 lockdown with someone of a different color from you in the same cell, you shut your mouth and you listen. You ask questions. And I had so many different cellmates from different countries, from different races and heritages. And it just really opened my mind. And sitting in prison, I had a lot of time to think. And I had some old timers tell me, I need to do my time. Don't let my time do me. And those are good words of advice. But I started digging deep into myself and my flaws, and because I was probably the biggest asshole I knew at that time, and I wasn't proud of that at all. And I knew I needed to change if I wanted to live a productive and healthy life and just be somebody likable. I just couldn't see the world for the way it really was. And that breaks my heart that it took me so long to see it. But the beauty that is born from this change, Amir, this growth is just crazy. God is amazing. So if you want me to continue this, let me know and I'll do a part 2.
What this woman did was a confirm what black communities already know. White America only shows up when it's convenient, when they can feel like savior, or when they need votes, bodies in war, or a scapegoat. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Was she brave, or she's late, or she's just loud enough to be heard? Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Thank you for watching this video. See you in the next one. Bye.